Well, I hope you haven't given up on me yet. I know this chemistry stuff can be brutal, but bear with it. It's only one chapter in biology, and we'll go through it, and you're going to remember so much of it, and you're going to be able to relate so much of it to what we're learning in the future of biology, too. Take a look at our far side. I think it's a phony one. Most people maybe don't. All right, so our lesson today is 2.3, and it is carbon compounds. Our goal is to describe the basic molecular structures and primary function of the four major categories of biological macromolecules. Yeah, we'll be talking a lot about macromolecules today. Our objectives, first one, there's only two, but it is still a doozy. First one is describe the unique qualities of carbon, and the second one is describe the structure and functions of each of the four groups of macromolecules. So that goal is broken down into two objectives today. So let's think about it. Water, as we learned before, is the solvent for life. But living organisms such as plants and animals are made up of chemicals based mostly on the element carbon. Plants use solar energy to transform CO2 into the molecules of life, which are then taken in by plant-eating animals. Think about what that means for life as we know it. Of all the elements, carbon is unparalleled in its ability to form molecules that are large, complex, and varied, making possible the diversity of organisms that have evolved on Earth. Proteins, DNA, carbohydrates, and other molecules that distinguish living matter from inanimate materials are all composed of carbon atoms bonded to one another into atoms of other elements. Hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, sulfur, and phosphorus, sponge, are other common ingredients of these compounds, but it is the element carbon that accounts for the enormous variety of biological molecules. So let's look at carbon. First objective, discuss the unique qualities of carbon. Take a look at the elements below. Notice the number of valence electrons in each element. Carbon has 6 electrons, 2 in the first electron shell and 4 in the second shell. Thus, it has 4 valence electrons in a shell that holds 8 electrons. What does that mean? A carbon atom usually tries to complete its valence shell by sharing its 4 electrons with other atoms so that 8 electrons are present. Each pair of shared electrons constitutes a covalent bond. In organic molecules, carbon usually forms a single or double covalent bonds. Each carbon atom acts as an intersection point from which a molecule can branch off in as many as 4 different directions. This versatility of carbon makes large, complex molecules possible. This variation at molecular level lies at the foundation of all biological diversity. So our objective 1 is discuss the unique qualities of carbon. As we just said, carbon atoms have 4 valence electrons, allowing them to form strong covalent bonds with many other elements, including hydrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, sulfur, and nitrogen to form the molecules of life. That was quick and easy. Now on to the doozies. Describe the structure and functions of each of the 4 groups of macromolecules. All right, so what are macromolecules? Macromolecules, all living things are made up of 4 classes of large biological molecules: carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. Within cells, small organic molecules are joined together to form larger molecules. Macromolecules are large molecules composed of thousands of covalently connected atoms. Molecular structure and function, again, are inseparable. Many of the organic compounds in living cells are macromolecules or giant molecules made from thousands or even hundreds of thousands of smaller molecules. Most macromolecules are formed by a process known as polymerization, in which large compounds are built by joining smaller ones together. The smaller units are called monomers, joined together to form polymers. The 4 major groups of macromolecules found in living things are carbohydrates, lipids, nucleic acids, and proteins, as we said before. Let's look at each one individually then. Carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are compounds made up of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen atoms, usually in a ratio of 1 to 2 to 1. Living things use carbohydrates as their main source of energy. The breakdown of sugars, such as glucose, supplies immediate energy for cell activities. Plants, some animals, and other organisms also use carbohydrates for structural purposes. Carbohydrates include both sugars and polymers of sugars. The simplest of carbohydrates are monosaccharides, or simple sugars. These are the monomers from which more complex carbohydrates are constructed. Here's what a monosaccharide molecule looks like. Disaccharides are double sugars. Di means two, right? Consisting of two monosaccharides joined together by a covalent bond. Here is an example of that. Carbohydrates also include macromolecules called polysaccharides, polymers composed of many sugar building blocks. You can see them right there. Many animals store excess sugar in a polysaccharide called glycogen. When the level of glucose in your blood runs low, glycogen is broken down into glucose, which is then released into the blood. The glycogen stored in your muscles supplies the energy for muscle contraction. You just learned about the first macromolecule, carbohydrates. Can you name the three types mentioned? Moving on to lipids. Lipids are a large and varied group of biological molecules. Lipids are made mostly from carbon and hydrogen atoms and are generally not soluble in water. Lipids are hydrophobic because they consist, Because they consist mostly of hydrocarbons, which form non-polar covalent bonds. Remember, water is polar. Something that's non-polar is hydrophobic. The most biological important lipids are fats, phospholipids, and steroids. Lipids can be used to store energy. Some lipids are important parts of biological membranes and waterproof coverings. Steroids synthesized by the body are lipids as well, and many steroids, such as hormones, serve as chemical messengers. Many lipids are formed when a glycerol molecule combines with compounds called fatty acids. This is the glycerol, and these are the fatty acids. If each carbon atom in the lipid fatty acid chain is joined to another carbon atom by a single bond, the lipid is said to be saturated. If there is at least one carbon-carbon double bond in a fatty acid, the fatty acid is said to be unsaturated. Saturated, unsaturated. Lipids whose fatty acids contain more than one double bond are said to be polyunsaturated. Makes sense? And lipids that contain unsaturated fatty acids, such as olive oils, tend to be liquid at room temperature. This is because the kinks of the carbon's double bond prevent the molecules from packing closely together enough to become solid at room temperature. Interesting, isn't it? The major function of fats, of course, is to store energy. Humans and other mammals store their fat in adipose cells. Here's a picture of a couple of fat cells, by the way. Adipose tissue also cushions the vital organs and insulates the bodies. So there's a purpose to fat. I'm missing something. All right, cells could not exist without another type of lipid, and they're called phospholipids. Phospholipids are essential because they make up cell membranes. In a phospholipids, two fatty acids in a phosphate group are attached to a glycerol. The two fatty acid tails are hydrophobic, but the phosphate group and its attachments form a hydrophilic head. When phospholipids are added to water, they assemble to a bilayer with the hydrophobic tails pointing toward the interior. The structure of phospholipids results in a bilayer arrangement found in cell membranes. Phospholipids are the major components of all cell membranes. You just heard about lipids. What are the major types of lipids? And we did skip steroids, I'm sorry. Steroids are lipids characterized by a carbon skeleton consisting of 4 fused rings. Cholesterol, an important steroid, is a component of animal cell membranes. Although cholesterol is essential in animals, high levels in the blood can contribute to cardiovascular disease. All right, so now you heard about the types of lipids. What are the major types of lipids? Think about that as a review in your mind. Moving on to nucleic acids. Nucleic acids store and transmit hereditary or genetic information. Nucleic acids are macromolecules containing hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, carbon, and phosphorus. They are polymers assembled from individual monomers known as nucleotides. Individual nucleotides can be joined by covalent bonds to form polynucleotide or nucleic acid. There are 2 kinds of nucleic acids that you may have heard of before: ribonucleic acid, or RNA, and deoxyribonucleic acid, or DNA. RNA contains the sugar ribose, and DNA contains the sugar deoxyribose. Did you know that? Genes are made of DNA, which is a nucleic acid. As you know, DNA is the genetic material that organisms inherit from their parents. So how does RNA, the other type of nucleic acid, fit into gene expression? Each gene, along with a DNA molecule, directs synthesis of a type of RNA called messenger RNA. The messenger RNA interacts with the cell's protein, synthesizing machinery to direct production of polypeptides. We can summarize the flow of genetic information as from the DNA to the RNA to the protein. And don't worry, we'll learn more about the DNA reproduction in later chapters. That's just for your information for right now. Now, the last macromolecule we're going to discuss are proteins. Proteins are macromolecules that contain nitrogen as well as carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Excuse me. They are polymers and molecules called amino acids. Proteins perform many varied functions such as controlling the rate of reactions, regulating cell process, forming cellular structures, transporting substances into and out of the cells, and helping to fight disease. Nearly every dynamic function of a living being depends on proteins. In fact, the importance of proteins is underscored by their name, which comes from the Greek word proteos, meaning first or primary. Amino acids are compounds with an amino group on one end and a carboxyl group on the other end. Covalent bonds, called peptide bonds, link amino acids together to form a polypeptide. A protein is a functional molecule built from one or more polypeptides. All amino acids are identical in the amino and carboxyl groups. Any amino acid can be joined to another amino acid by a peptide bond formed between these 2 amino and carboxyl groups. Amino acids differ from each other on a side chain called the R group, which has a range of different properties. There are more than 20 different types of amino acids because of the different R groups that are found in nature. This variety results in proteins being among the most diverse of the macromolecules. A little more detail about these proteins. Proteins have 4 levels of structure. A protein's primary structure is a sequence of its amino acids. Secondary structure is the folding. This is the primary right here, by the way. The secondary structure is the folding or coiling of the polypeptide chain. Tertiary structure is the complete 3-dimensional arrangement of a polypeptide chain. The tertiary structure is where the protein functions well. Proteins with more than one chain have a 4th level of structure, which describes the way in which the different polypeptide chains are arranged and with respect to each other. For example, the protein shown here, hemoglobin, consists of 4 subunits, and it is in a quaternary structure. In addition to primary structure, physical chemical conditions can affect the structure of the protein. Alterations in the pH, too acidic or too base, too much salt, temperature, and other environmental factors can cause a protein to unravel. The loss of a protein's native structure is called denaturization. A denatured protein is biologically inactive. So we'll talk about that in class 2. Well, here's a chart listing all the wonderful functions of proteins. They really do so much for life. Let's review Objective 2. Objective 2. Describe the structures and functions of each of the 4 groups of macromolecules. The first one was living things use carbohydrates as their main source of energy. Plants, some animals, and other organisms use carbohydrates for structural purposes too. Lipids can be used to store energy. Some lipids are important parts of biological membranes at waterproof coverings, phospholipids. Nucleic acids store and transmit heredity or genetic information. And some proteins control the rate of reactions or regulate cell processes. Others form important cell structures, while others still transport substances in and out of the cells or to help fight disease. So those are the 4 major macromolecules that we discuss in biology, and we'll be touching upon as throughout the whole book. Become familiar with their functions and their structures. Maybe make a chart to help you. Here is a chart that I included with the slide. You can look it over, but it's nice to make your own chart too. So as a final review, ask yourself, can you describe the unique qualities of carbon? And can you describe the structures and functions of each of the 4 groups of macromolecules? Good news is one more lesson left in this chemistry section of biology, and then we move on to some more biology. Talk to you soon. Bye.